Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavosden, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
And I'm Mischievous Mark Ginocchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but the annuals don't count.
Don't say it, Mark.
Oh, I say it and spray it, Dan.
Well, welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. This is going to be one of our review episodes of the Amazing Spider Talk, so strap yourselves in for some commentary on your favorite character and some of our favorite comics, I hope.
Okay, well, if you want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app. Every other week, we put out a mainline episode of our flagship show, and sprinkled in between, we review new comics as well as interview some of the greatest Spider-Man creators of yesterday and today. This is the perfect time to start listening. Well, Dan, today on the show, you and I are going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 5, number 86, entitled Beyond, Chapter 12. This issue was written by Zeb Wells with art from Michael Dowling, colors from Bryan Balenza, a cover by Arthur Adams and Alejandro Sanchez Rodriguez, and of course, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. This issue was first released in stores on January 19th, 2021.
Yeah, and I'm going to get right into my summary of the issue. So in this issue, Marcus sends Ben on a mission to defeat the criminal Hellbomb, but Ben has disobeyed Mark's directives and disobeyed Marcus's directives and got a lot of property destroyed. Later, Ben is reluctant to talk with Dr. Kafka about the incident, unfazed by the damage, but he is concerned about his placement in the Beyond Corporation. Janine, meanwhile, reveals that Ben slipped her the drive in his mask in the previous issue. She stares at the drive, unsure of what to do. Ben opens up to Kafka that he no longer trusts Beyond, and surprisingly, Kafka agrees with him. Kafka says that she asked for autonomy from Beyond before signing on, but she and Ben are both pretty dumb because a few floors up, Maxine Danger is covertly recording the session between them. Ben tells Kafka about Doc Ock's drive, and then she opens up about what she knows about Ben. Apparently, Beyond wanted a Spidey with a clean slate, so they've been wiping his memories, and she's been using her ring to stitch him back together. Ben then hints that Beyond doesn't seem to just be playing the superhero game. Remember the UFOs, Mark?
Oh, I remember, Dan.
Well,
all the way back, issue 1.
It looks like Beyond was behind that, just as we suspected. Maxine ends the session with sonics and tranquilizers, and as she takes Ben away, Kafka begs that they not wipe his memory again. Meanwhile, Marcus checks in on Janine and lies to her, so she uses a knife to take him hostage and sneaks him out of Beyond at Maxine's also really dumb approval. Maxine orders a mind wipe on Ben, but it goes out of control when they find Ben demolishing his own formative memories as his mind tears apart and collapses inward.
Well, there you go, Dan. I mean, that was a very eventful issue of Amazing Spider-Man, to say the least.
It's almost as if we've been on pause for a little while, and Zeb coming back just kind of kicked us back into gear. And I think that's a great place to start on a review of this issue. Is like, Zed's not dead, or Zeb in this case is not dead. He's back. And
right.
Boy, I think this issue kicks this story into high gear now, which is weird because I think we're getting a Peter issue next. So, but this thing just felt like a rocket just strapped onto this story. And now there seems like there might actually be momentum. So it'll be a real bummer if that's not the case. But boy, I appreciated it. We've been lamenting the pacing of this title, and this was just enough to get me back on board with what's going on with Beyond and all of this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I feel like, the Patrick Gleason Peter-focused issue from a few weeks ago, I mean, that was, I think, a really good entry in Beyond, but it's really been kind of hit or miss. And you and I were both saying in our most recent review that the Ben story had really kind of stalled out for us. So this gets Ben's story moving with very positive momentum again. And I mean, like, this is good stuff. And Wells, clearly Wells is is the mastermind of this arc. He is the driver, but like it does make you wonder a little bit. You know, how much of a concept did they truly have here to drive forward this Beyond arc? I mean, I know they even added a couple of chapters to it, but like as we kind of experienced a lot during the Nick Spencer run, we were getting a lot of like I felt like standing in place in some of the prior issues related to Ben. So I mean, whereas I tip my hat for them moving the story forward in such a dramatic and I think a positive way in terms of it being compelling. It does make me, it's kind of a backhanded compliment to be like, yes, it's great that you're doing this, but like, you know, why were we? You're telling me we couldn't have moved this a little more incrementally prior to this for before having a big reveal like this? I don't know, Dan. Am I being a little too picky here?
No, I mean, this is 10 issues or 9 issues after we last got a Zeb Wells issue, and that felt like the one that truly moved Ben's story forward. I mean, I guess we've had a few little minor things here and there, but really, I think if you had this issue kind of right after the second issue, I don't think I would have blinked for a second,
Yeah.
if we had seen this. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is kind of like the depiction of Ben, which we can talk about, like the way his arc is being handled. But I do, I mean, to kind of get like beyond the comic, I actually think this is an interesting timing of this issue, which is like we've all been feeling kind of down on the book, and then here comes Zeb Wells to just inject some energy back into it, and you time this up with the announcement that he's taking over the book with John Romita Jr. I mean, what a good week for Zeb Wells! Like this really warmed me to him because it made me feel like, oh, this guy actually can write this thing. So.
Yeah. And as we discussed in our episode where we talked about the new creative team, I mean, like, and this is not meant as disrespect to Zeb Wells, but like, I think kind of universally the excitement was more on the end of John Romita Jr. coming back to Spider-Man, and with Zeb Wells, it was more like, I mean, at least in terms of you and I, it was like, well, he's done some good stuff on Spider-Man in the past. I mean, we really haven't seen like a consistent run of big memorable stories from him, so there's still that curiosity, but like I think a book like this kind of proves that he can swing for the fences here and do some big stuff. So like we will see where this all goes, and we will see what Zeb does paired off with John Romita Jr. But like anyone who thinks that Zeb is going to be a total lightweight here, I think like they can look at this comic and see the opposite of that case.
Yeah, I mean, I have to get into talking cynically, and I don't like being this guy, but like you mentioned them adding a few issues on. I mean, it seems clear to me that they've teed up JRJR, to do 6 issues to land him at issue 900, right? So that he can do that big issue that he's probably been working on for months. And so they're just kind of like giving Zeb the time to work on whatever's coming after this. And so like, I almost feel bad for the other writers because, it feels to me like you're right. There's a bit of a flimsy story going on here, and the other writers couldn't really move the plot forward because it's being dictated by Wells. But at the same time, like, I think this depiction of Ben feels much more akin to what I expect the character to be, and like what I would have wanted the character to be in this story. And so let's talk about like the depiction of Ben in this comic, because, I could see how this part of the arc, to me at least, matches up with what Wells wrote before. Like, I think of all the writers, Wells wrote Ben as the company man the most. And what's been weird about this story so far to me is that, like, and we've been saying on the show, like, I don't know if Ben really believes in Beyond or anything he's doing. He's constantly kind of subverting them. But, like, I wish that he had been, like, a real company man, because then this kind of, like, backstabbing would feel more violent on his part, like, because he had invested in them and here they were manipulating him, that the violent anger that we see in this issue would feel really justified because he felt so cheated. And that like everybody in between the Zeb Wells entries has just been kind of like, well, we have to make Ben seem kind of like, I guess you were saying it before, not dumb. But at the same time, like, if he had thrown himself into this thing completely, I think this issue's emotional resonance would be even stronger, and I already liked it.
Yeah, I agree with that, and like, frankly, there's also kind of like, with any kind of weird characterization of Ben, now we kind of have the built-in excuse of, well, his mind was wiped. You know what I mean? Which I
Right.
think kind of sets it up too. Like we can kind of, excuse away any. And I'm not saying that that wasn't the plan all along, and that's not why how he wasn't being written. But like it's certainly a convenient plot point for Ben to now have that at his disposal. It's um yeah, part of the issue still is, Dan, and like not to kind of harbor a point that kind of predates a single issue of Beyond, but it's like, I'm not, I'm still kind of in a weird place with Ben Riley, the character, in terms of, do I truly care where this thing is going with him? You know what I mean? Like it's, I don't know. Like it's just kind of hard to separate myself from that. Like this, if this is Peter, obviously there is far more um, emotional resonance for me to watch the character struggle. But with Ben, it still kind of feels slightly disconnected. So I don't know. What am I, again? Am I being a little off kilter here?
No, I mean, I think for me, like in that regard, it's like there's no way to avoid just how random this story still feels 12 issues in. Like, why Ben? Why now? Um,
Right.
and like, there are beats in this where it suggested that Ben was the one who wanted his memories erased because of the corruption that had occurred to him during the clone conspiracy. And it was actually Kafka who put an end to the memory erasing because she felt it was too deleterious to his personality and actually dangerous. And we're going to, I think, see that in subsequent um, parts of this story. Um, and it's weird because it kind of ignores Peter David's solo run with the character. But like, I didn't
Yeah.
love that run, so I don't
No.
really care that it does. But it is kind of inconsistent, and like Ben is kind of a nebulous personality, which I don't know. At least by the end of this issue, I felt like a lot more confident that I knew like what was driving him, even if it wasn't necessarily
Mm.
reflected in the issues that preceded it.
Yeah.
What did you think of like this
No,
whole Ben Riley like clone thing, like him and Kafka coming to like address that they're both clones?
um, yeah, I mean, like, I mean, it was a good moment. Like, I think, unfortunately, part of that moment, some of the emotional resonance of that moment is kind of lost by the fact that, like, as you alluded to in your summary, these characters are acting incredibly dumb and naive
Yeah,
during this whole sequence. You know what I mean? Like you kind of want them to have this moment, but like they're both like, I say, I don't trust um, Beyond. It's like neither do I, and but then don't worry, I have full autonomy and they won't interfere. And you're just like, oh please, you know what I mean? Like I didn't even need to. You didn't even need to see the next panel to know that Maxine is going to be there listening. So like, like, yeah, like I said, like some and this issue is kind of uh, at 2 points kind of undermined by the fact that like characters just act really outrageously dumb, and it kind of takes a little, I think, takes a little bit of wind out of the sails. Um, I kind of like that Ben and Kafka have this moment, and you kind of again get more of this idea, like the thesis here of why we've been saying from the get go, why exactly is Beyond doing this, and you know I've also been saying, why has Ben going along with it? Well, he's going along with it because again, the memory wipe, but like, okay, it makes much more sense now that Beyond is doing this because they feel like they can have a hero that they can truly mold and manipulate, because of the blank slate that comes with being a clone. And you can say the same for Kafka. I mean, we don't know how many times Kafka's brain's been
Right,
wiped, you
sure.
know? So I don't, so um, it's it's a fascinating dynamic that I do think is slightly undermined by the characters just kind of being dumb about it.
I mean, if I would know prize it, I would say like the reason Kafka is dumb is because they just keep wiping her mind too. Like, oh, you're
Right.
trusting in us. Oh, that's you distrust us. We're just gonna erase your mind over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, I did appreciate these kind of like character moments, and I think Dowling's art really captures like it sensitively. It reminds me of like Bagley and Ultimate Spider-Man, the just kind of talking heads in between panels, and it's nice to get a good quiet issue of Spider-Man for the most part like this. We haven't had anything like that in quite some time, and I think if anything that Wells has, it's kind of like really great pacing and working with artists to really pace pages out well. And there's a humanity in this book, even if they don't act entirely smart, that like I believe in, that I haven't believed in a lot of the other Spider-Man titles we've been getting. So I appreciate that about this issue. And then you've got Bryan Balenza's colors. He puts this like kind of orange color in Ben's eyes. That's kind of fire, and it's really intense. Like that he is not reacting to the actions he took with Hellbomb, and then he's talking to Kafka about it. I think there's a real intensity communicated on the page in the artwork that I really liked
Yeah.
and appreciated.
Yeah, 100%. The art is really strong in this issue, especially from a character perspective, not so much from an action perspective. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
So, Mark, before we finish our review of this issue, why don't you tell our listeners about where they can chat with us about all things Spider-Man?
yeah, well, hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on the Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more.
I hang out in the Slack, and I've been talking on the Slack about this new Al Ewing, Ram V, and Brian Hitch Venom series. Mark, are you caught up on Venom at all?
I'm about an issue behind right now, but it's pretty
I mean,
cool. What
it's
I've
a
read so far.
wild and a weird comic. I mean, it is swinging for the fences, and I'm not even necessarily sure I know what it's doing, but I do appreciate it, and new Brian Hitch art is always appreciated. So come talk to me about Venom. Maybe you can clear it up for me a little bit more than I seem to understand it. And yeah, come join our Slack. There's a link in the description. Come say hi to us, and ping me when you get there, and we'll talk Venom if you really, really do want to. All right, Mark, let's get back to talking about Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 86. And before we go on, I really want to continue shouting out Art Adams' covers on these issues. I mean, this one, I think, was like an iconic cover of Ben crouched and covered in spiders. I mean, I remember seeing the solicit for this and thinking, oh boy, I can't wait to get to that issue. And I love these kind of symbolic pieces that kind of cover the emotional range of the issue. Are you have you always been an Art Adams fan, or is this kind of a new discovery for you, Mark?
This is definitely a newer discovery. I mean, like I mean, what else has he done? I mean, I'm just trying to, in terms of, yeah. I mean, like I know the name, but I'm like trying to pin like a creative run with his
Well,
artwork.
okay, I'll bust out some really obscure ones for you. Like the thing where he first appeared for me was the final run of Ultimate X-Men, where they kind of like killed off
Okay,
all the X-Men and had this new young team with
right.
like Wolverine's son before the book was canceled. And he's been doing
Okay.
some Avengers stuff, I think, but he's kind of been like a little all over the place and not really had any long runs that I know of. But like this consistency with the covers here is really wonderful. I think we've got some really great stuff from him, and this one to me was a standout.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if we would call this a standout per se, but something that's worth talking about for this issue is I feel like we finally get some real traction with Janine's story. I mean, like, I don't know, Janine has kind of been one of the biggest letdowns for me of Beyond. I feel like, we just don't quite get what the purpose is here of her outside of being kind of, something that's tethering Ben to Beyond for reasons that we don't quite know. But she, we kind of bust into her biography a bit here, and she drives her action. Now, granted, there is like some stupid reactions that come from her driving the action, but at least she's driving action, and I appreciate that, right?
I mean, a female character in a Spider-Man book that just exists to date the hero. I've never heard of that before, but no, I agree.
Right.
I think this is the first time she's been truly interesting as a character in the book. First of all, that kind of sleight of hand where where Ben passed the mask to her in the last issue. I'll tell you, I was truly confused by that moment in the last issue and had no thought that like he was slipping her the drive. I felt like really tricked. Like I thought that was really clever when I opened this book up, and a nice play across the different writers here. I was not expecting this and was truly fooled. We didn't even talk about that on the last episode. So I'm guessing it slipped by you too.
We just glossed right over it. Yeah, absolutely. It was not a moment that stood out to me, but then seeing it kind of redone here was like, oh, okay, that was really cool.
Yeah. So I loved all of that, and seeing her kind of like looking at the dresser and running events through her mind. And if there's one thing you should know about Janine, there was the drama around the murder of her father, and was it her fault? Did she do it? And did she actually murder him? And here she's like leveraging that history to scare Marcus when she pulls a knife on him. And it's like, oh, cool. Like someone's actually doing something with Janine in an interesting way. Now, Mark, I'm sure you're going to want to talk about the really dumb thing that happens, as I mentioned earlier in the review.
Well, right. I mean, it's like, she's got Marcus at like knife point or whatever you want to call it point. And, like trying to bust out, and like Marcus is radioing Maxine, and it's just like, yeah, just go. It's like, wait, what? like at the exact moment that they're all kind of swarming on Ben for and betraying Ben. So it's like, wow, you really didn't think this one through, didn't you, Maxine? Like, you outsmarted one of them, but totally took your eyes off the prize with the other. I mean, like, it's just, like you hate to see that in a comic where, like, it's very clear that the story needs to get from point A to point B, but like they're kind of painted into a corner in terms of how to get there. So instead, they just kind of make people do dumb stuff.
Is Maxine the only one watching the video feed? Yeah.
It's just very bizarre to me. But you know what? Like I said, we're allowing Janine to be a lot more aggressive and assertive, and like I said, driving her own story instead of just kind of being an accessory. So hopefully when we return to Ben Reilly's story in another issue or two, we'll get more of that, and that'll be good. I look forward to that, because, like, when Janine was first introduced, I feel like a lot of fans were like, "Oh my God, it's Janine!" And like, I'm trying to remember. I mean, I and not to sound dumb here, Dan, but I'm assuming she was introduced in Lost Years. I mean, is
right.
that where
she's from? Lost Years.
So like, obviously, like the Clone Saga nostalgia was taking over for some people, but like, for me, she wasn't doing much of note in this book, so I didn't quite get the hype.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, whatever. So here we go.
Well, I mean, to close this out, I just wanted to say, like, this book kind of made me excited for the title again. I mean, even if it's just down to like that there is actual forward momentum that like can't really be stopped, right? I say that having not read next week's issue, but like there are dominoes that seem to be falling here, and I can't wait to see like what happens next. I'm actually really excited. And there's a bunch of seeds for things where things are going. So like, I expect one of the next big, shoes to drop is going to be that, like, it seems clear that Beyond is also funding supervillains, starting with the UFOs, but probably moving into the Lizard, right? Because we saw,
Right.
our favorite characters in the world going to get the Lizard. And we know there's the Goblin Queen coming up soon, and maybe that's a Beyond creation as well. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're starting to see like the pieces that were laid out, whatever, 12 issues ago, really kind of starting to come together. I don't know that I'm like loving to see the Spider-Man fighting each other, but I do think ultimately that's where it's headed. You've got like Ben losing his memories and maybe his Uncle Ben memory, and you've got Peter without strength, and like what overcomes the other? Is it power or responsibility? We also got that idea, I think, at the beginning of the Nick Spencer run, right? Who would be superior, the one with the power or the one with the responsibility? Is that where you see this going, Mark?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like, I do want to just add on there too. I appreciated that, you had mentioned the Uncle Ben memory, and it's like, I mean, again, we're tying up all of like, I feel like the dangling ends here, for what was first introduced, when this started 12 issues ago. Everything is starting to make sense now, which, I know shouldn't be that big of a request in a long form narrative story, but based on what preceded it in terms of introducing ideas and then not really resolving them in a sensible way, like, I'm just glad that we're getting these answers now, and we're truly understanding what's happening here. Like, there's no other mystery in terms of that initial Uncle Ben, faceless Uncle Ben vision. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, this is what's happening here. I like that.
Yeah.
Like, finally, some closure. just give me some goddamn closure, please. But yeah, I mean, like, yes, I too am kind of like nonplussed by a Spider-Man versus Spider-Man fight. Although I'm assuming we're gonna get like some big call outs to like 149 or something like that. The first time the clone appeared. I think all I'm gonna say is it would be nice for me as a reader and as a fan, if we're gonna go through this whole story with Ben Reilly really kind of being the lead here, that he gets some kind of both some kinds of redemption, at the end of this, but also some kind of independence where the character and the independence, I think, is going to be harder because at the end of the day, you got Ben Reilly out there, the clone of Spider-Man. It's still, kind of when you make it at its most derivative form, it's going to be another Spider person. So, like, what can you truly do to kind of separate him apart from Peter? But like, I just also hope that there's kind of some level of redemption here, and not kind of the redemption we were kind of getting in that Peter David series that we were not fans of, but something more tangible and emotionally resonant. So, what about you? I mean, what are you hoping to see out of Ben here?
I mean, I want to just back up what you were saying, which is like independence, right? And like give him his actual own life to live. If we're really going to jump into 90s nostalgia here, I mean, I think there was real value in like the kind of like back to basics Peter Parker that they tried to get to in the 90s, even if it was through the Ben Reilly story that people didn't really quite dig. But like, Ben is an interesting character in his own right, and I would love to see him get that opportunity to actually do that. I think that was what people signed on to the Peter David book for, hoping that it would be like a real Ben Reilly, as his own hero story, before it was kind of more of just a follow up on the clone conspiracy and Mephisto nonsense and angels and devils and things. I'm hoping for that, but I actually think the end of this book is really quite exciting because it reminds me a lot of the ending of Superior Spider-Man, where you and I had talked during Superior Spider-Man that like we thought perhaps it was their way of like actually maybe starting to fix the Peter Parker character by unshackling him from all of these memories and really getting him down to his core and what made him him. But here at the end of this book, we're seeing that core being like dumped away and destroyed, right? All those memories that he shared with Peter are now being erased. And I think that's actually really interesting, is like, who is this guy if he's not Peter Parker, and if he doesn't have those memories. And I don't know, Mark, if you're reading this event that's going on right now, Timeless, the big Kang event that's happening. Well,
No, not yet.
spoilers for Timeless #1, but in that we get to see kind of like a little bit of the future of the Marvel Universe, like they like to do in those kind of digests where they show you like those web of things where you see all the different images from around the Marvel Universe. And there's one that shows like a Scarlet Spider on the West Coast. And so like, I wonder if by the end of this, we have a new Ben Reilly without the baggage of Peter Parker and his memories that can redefine himself on the West Coast, away from, again, even just the physical baggage of the, nearness to Peter Parker. And that's actually really exciting to me, I would be curious to see that, if only because I live in LA and I would love to see a Spider-Man swinging around a place with no buildings that go above a floor or two.
I would say, it's probably going to be San Francisco again.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. But anyway, I do think that that's ultimately where we're headed, is like some kind of reckoning that lets Ben unshackle himself from this thing that's haunted him for so long.
Yeah. You want to give a grade for this, Dan?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to give this one a B.
Oh, wow. I'm actually, I thought this was going to be a case where I was going to go a shade lower than you, but I'm actually going a shade higher. I'm going to give this a B+.
I need to give this a B+, but I think I'm just like those two kind of dumb moments. Like, I
got that. I mean, like for me, that was, I guess, where I was thinking was like, oh, I bet Dan goes A-, and I'm going to go B+, because, see, those characters acted dumb, but like, I guess, anyway. So, alas, this is why I should never predict how you're going to go, but I'm sticking my guns. I'm going to say B+. It goes to show how excellent of an issue it was. Save those two character moments that but I think it truly hurt it from being from a very good issue to becoming a great one. So but like, hey, this was a lot of fun to read, and this is the most invested I've been in Ben's story since this whole thing started. So let's keep pushing it, Marvel.
Yeah, I think I should probably go B+, but whatever. I'm sticking to it, I guess. So great. If you've enjoyed this show and you find it entertaining and valuable, you might want to consider supporting us. You can do so by just recommending Amazing Spider Talk to a friend, but the next best way to support us is to become a part of our huge following on the Patreon.
We can only bring you this content with the support of our Patreon members, and we owe the show's success to every single one of them. And Dan, we are also constantly making exclusive content for our Patreon members.
Yeah, like a discussion of the Zeb Wells and JRJR run back when it was first announced. So why not take $3.99, the very price of a new comic, and put it towards a month subscription to support the show and start receiving our Patreon content. I release all of our Patreon reviews 3 months after the comics come out and when they appear on the Marvel Unlimited app. But if you don't want to wait 3 months and you read this comic and you're going to forget about it in 3 months, why not sign up for our Patreon and get our, scathing or praising reviews of all these issues right when those new issues come out.
Yes, our scathing comment. This comic's good. This comic's bad. No, I'm kidding. And if you contribute $10 a month, you gain access to exclusive artwork from famous Spider-Man artists commissioned exclusively for our members. Plus, every episode we release a new episode-specific desktop background created for us by artist Nick Cagnetti for our patrons to enjoy.
Yeah, but of course we know it's a hard time for everybody, as it is for us too, so we appreciate anyone who supports the show just by listening and sharing. But again, if you have the means, why not join our Patreon to support our continued existence? And, the existence of our show. Mark and I will continue to exist, I hope.
I hope
so follow the link in the description. It will guide you right there, and you can look at all the things we have to offer and make the choice that's right for you. And again, a thank you to all the members who've already checked out our Patreon and signed up, because we couldn't do the show without you.
But alas, Stan, sir, it is that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning into this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this episode was edited by Rick Coase with production support from Andy Myers. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friends, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. Our theme songs were produced by Ryland Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider-Madge. So, Mark, until I finish erasing your memory of the time that you bought me an Amazing Fantasy 15 with your son's college fund, what's our motto?
Wait, what?
Hey, can you?
I have a college
Can
fund?
you put this ring on your head, Mark?
Absolutely. There's no reason why I shouldn't trust you, Dan. Our motto, of course, is with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Two men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to dangle. I'll be in 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon. They'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing Spider Talk. The amazing Spider